talk about tech jobs. And you know the old adage that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you're lucky in that I'm going to distill down tech jobs into one graphic for you today. On the left we have tech, and on the right we have jobs. Thank you. You guys are like, yeah, please do stop. Okay. So yes, it's funny, but I think it also is symbolic of something that we're going to talk about today. This is obviously when we talk about tech, nationwide. Oftentimes, it's this picture that oftentimes gets connoted with tech because it's visible, it's in our hands, or the devices that we're using on an everyday basis. But I think that what's evidenced, was evidenced in the report that I'm going to share with you some of the highlights of today. And I think is obvious by looking at the showcase room and some of the folks in the room, is that tech is much broader than this. It's not just about consumer device, but tech is not only broad, but those of you who remember the Mark Andreessen article from 2011 that he wrote in the Wall Street Journal, Software is Eating the World. That's continuing to come true as technology permeates everything that we do, every industry. And I think that now we're even seeing that the evolution of not only software, but data and the creation and collection of that software and the analysis of that software is permeating every industry as well. So I'm going to share with you the highlights. Many of you are probably employers, have your own teams, part of teams obviously where you are in the hunt for and you are managing tech talent. And so we just recently did a study that has really had three different components to it. We did a survey of 71 companies in the central Indiana region. We did an analysis of Bureau of Labor Statistics data of current occupations in the area today, and which we would just consider the supply of tech jobs today. And then we also aggregated job postings, so we looked at demand. We looked at, in aggregate, which companies are looking for which jobs, and then can distill that intelligence down and bring that to you today. And I'll just say as well, I'll quickly go through three components of this presentation. I've got stats, I've got some solutions, and I've got a story that I want to share with you. So we're going to lead off with the stats. There was a report that was done in 2012, CICP released, that looked across all industries and said, hey, which industries are growing faster than the national average? And which ones should we be focusing in on? And no surprise to any of us in this room, tech jobs in the central Indiana area were one of the few industries growing faster than the national average, and then thus begged. I came into this role a little over 2 years ago. I've been with 4 tech companies prior to this. And we took that ball and ran with it to try to determine, okay, where do we dig in order to help drive? Ultimately, what TechPoint does is we connect and we catalyze the tech community and tech companies in this ecosystem to help you grow. Ultimately, when we're operating at our best, we're enriching a sandbox to enable you to grow, your companies to grow and be more successful here in central Indiana. It's us making a place impact, and that's why I came into this role, been able to start a startup company from scratch and take that to acquisition and work for a very large company in Experian, and really, really enjoyed that ride. And here I wanted to make a place impact. I wanted to make a geographic impact. And so that's what we're seeking to do in our programs, which I'll share with you here in just a little bit. So ultimately, we did the Technology Workforce Report 2013 to 2014. This year, we just released last week in partnership with Indy, a new cut of this tech data. And when I share with more a layman audience, I help to explain, to articulate to them what are the kind of tech jobs that we're talking about. These are all familiar to you. So when we looked at the occupation codes that are tech jobs, they're jobs like this. People will sometimes ask me, what is a tech company nowadays? When every company is increasingly becoming a tech company. We slice the universe 3 different ways. We say there are tech product companies that sell hardware or software to the marketplace. There are tech service companies that sell their people's time and their people's expertise to the marketplace. And there are tech-enabled companies, and increasingly, every company is increasingly a tech-enabled company, that their competitive differentiator, the sustenance of their business is relying on technology. These are some examples of companies locally and some that participated in the survey. of employers that I referenced before. This is one of the interesting findings that I think was unique to this study that we determined. We wanted to look at how big are tech jobs. A lot of times you see people looking at industries and looking specifically at the sector. But because we know that we all permeate lots of different companies and lots of different industry sectors, we wanted to cut across the walls of businesses and the walls of sectors and say just how many computer-related occupations are there here in central Indiana, and how does that compare to other industry sectors? And so the key finding here is you look at the top bar is logistics. That's the sector. So that's everybody from the CEO to the janitor. Everybody in between that's employed in that sector. Same with advanced manufacturing, life sciences, alternative energy. And what you can see there is that then we looked at occupations, computer-related occupations. There are almost 34,000 computer-related jobs, people in computer-related jobs employed here in central Indiana. And by comparison, that's more people that are employed in life sciences in its entirety. And actually, the graphic shifted a little bit. It didn't render appropriately. It's just shy of the number of people employed in advanced manufacturing in its entirety as well. So that surprised a lot of people. And then we looked at, are those jobs, are they in tech product and tech services companies, the kind of companies that people would oftentimes consider tech companies, or are they in other companies? And what you can see here, it's about a 60-40 split, just shy of a 60-40 split of people in tech jobs working in tech-enabled companies, companies that you wouldn't necessarily consider tech companies. These jobs have been growing quickly. You can see this is from 2009 to 2014. We've seen about a 5,000 job uptick over that span of time. What that translates by comparison, all occupations in that span of time grew by about 8%. In computer and IT, they grew by 17%. So significantly faster growth. Forbes, you may have seen in 2013, ranked Central Indiana as a top 10 metro for tech job growth. So this is now, that's current employment. Then we looked at job postings comparing 2010 to 2014 to look at how many people are hiring for what jobs. What you can see is in 2010, there were about 6,800 computer-related job postings. That increased by 3,800 to 2014. We're now at 10,600, over 10,600 job postings for computer-related jobs here in central Indiana. And so those postings are by companies like WellPoint, Interactive Intelligence, Salesforce, Angie's List, IU, MMY Consulting, Teradata, Eli Lilly, Ascension Health, United Health Group, Covance, Car Auction Services, Liberty Mutual. So a variety of different companies that are actively hiring. And again, this is utilizing a tool called burning glass that's aggregating and scraping. So it's an imperfect science. Obviously, a lot of jobs that are posted and hired for don't show up necessarily in that tool. But you can see where the demand's coming from. So I'll let you skim through here quickly on your own. Software developers, engineers, they're at the top. Computer support specialists, systems analysts, network and system administrators, database administrators on down. I'll let you read through those. But you can arguably even take computer programmers and add that into software developers, which makes it about 2,750 job postings just for that occupation. One of the interesting, as you guys are thinking about, so where do we get this talent? Software developers, oftentimes one of the prerequisites for that is one of the asks in that position is a bachelor's degree or higher. As we looked at all these job postings, all those job postings, a little over 80% were asking for a bachelor's degree or higher. Just shy of 20% were asking for less than that, an associate's or a certificate. And if you remember back to the slide that was just prior to this, the computer support specialist role, that's oftentimes one that was the ask there was a certificate. And so as a result, there are two different career paths or educational paths for individuals here locally. So then we ask by experience, what are you looking for? And you can see 17% said they're hiring 17% new grads, 30% just shy of 5 years, entry-level folks, 31% young professionals 5 to 10 years, and 22% looking for 10 years or greater. So in aggregate, just over half of the surveyed companies looking for computer and IT professionals with 5+ years. of experience. We asked about competition. 80% said high or somewhat high level of competition. Probably no surprise, many of you are in the room. And here's the interesting thing. Then we asked about any perceived skills gap. And the response was 73% perceived a mainly moderate or significant skills gap. So then we asked, okay, how are you upskilling your existing talent? One of the interesting findings out of this is there's not really a very kind of formulaic way that this is happening today. It's mainly in-house, which means that it's running all across the board. Some people not doing it at all, and I'm sure some people have some world-class programs inside their facility. But this is where folks, I think 1150, Scott Jones, I think was on the agenda earlier today, WGU Indiana, an online university for adults, and also other university programs are actively trying to fill this niche in order to create an upskilling pathway for people to meet these needs. I see Jeff Tunn in the room as well. Some of the programs at Goodwill actively helping to close this gap too. Quantity of grads. So then we looked at the universities and we said, okay, if we have this need to fill quantity and quality of this talent, how many are coming from universities? This is a great trend line, obviously. It's increased 2,000 grads between 2000 and the end of 2013 school year. So that's a great trend. But here's the interesting thing to compare it against. So then we compared that to the quantity of graduates by field. If you think about the pathways for people like software developers, which was the degree that was, or the job that was most in demand, computer science, the primary pathway to that. In aggregate, that's 417 graduates in 2013 from universities that directly served Central Indiana. Compare that, remember the stat back here that said 17% of the demand was for recent grads. Well, let's take 17% of 2,500. What's that come to? 425. So what that means is we could hire, of the current demand right now, take for example software developers. We could hire every one of the current graduates that's coming out of our universities right now, just with local companies. And that's not even to speak of when we go and we're recruiting talent on behalf of many of your companies through our extern program. We're shoulder to shoulder with Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Apple and others. There are a lot of other folks that are hunting for our tech talent as well. So we absolutely need to increase the quantity here. Okay. I knew I flew through those stats quickly. You can get this on our website or Higher Up's website as well. If you go to techpoint.org, you can download the full study. These are just some of the highlights, but I at least wanted to share some of those highlights with you. Some of the takeaways, as we look at what's the big picture solution here, it's a quantity and a quality challenge. And again, this is not just a Central Indiana thing. This is a nationwide phenomenon. But we just have to be cognizant of, yes, we need to have pipelines that supply quantity. We also need to have programs that upskill quality. And also, the other duality here is that this is not only a college thing. A huge percentage of the workforce, of the near-term workforce needs, are going to have to be met by people who have already exited the K-12 educational system. So as a result, this has to have an adult education component to it as well. So we need to solve for quantity, quality. We need to solve for students, kids, as well as adults. And we also learned that this impacts more than just tech companies, that every company is increasingly becoming a tech company. So what do we do about it? Those were the stats. Now the solution. Let me talk about some of the solutions that we're putting in place today. And we'll roll a video.
Indy Extern connects high-caliber students to our thriving tech community here in Indianapolis. Companies that participate in our program range from early-stage startups to one of the 200 largest software firms in the world. And it's been designed to make sure you have the best summer of your life.
First of all, you get to be involved in the Indianapolis community, and you get to see what, you know, tech, jobs, environments, work areas, all these things. But then, on the other hand, you get to be involved with other people that also know what you know and love what you love.
So students this year lived in 4-bedroom apartments. Every student had their own apartment, fully equipped, kitchen, everything we would need for housing for a summer. And so this year students lived very close to downtown, and the housing is really what makes the program so special. And I think that when students talk about extern, now they refer to it as their extern family. And that wouldn't happen if you didn't live together.
Being close enough where it's walkable is awesome because there's just a lot of opportunities for exploring, and we go to the canal together as groups, and that brings us back to how great it is to live together because it's easy to meet up.
Indianapolis truly has a community that simply doesn't exist and can't exist elsewhere. And it's not only a community of peers and friends, but it's building a network that will last far beyond the 10 to 12 weeks of your internship.
So that was a video from the first summer of Extern, which was last year. We essentially brought 3 parts together. Obviously the job with a great company, housing. We lease an entire apartment building at IUPUI for the students to live in. We recruit them from universities all over the country. And then the third part is we indoctrinate them with Indianapolis, and we give them this city experience that they can't get anywhere else, so that they're participating in hackathons, and we're having speakers come in and speak to them. They're visiting companies of different types. They are mentoring elementary school kids in how to code, all the kind of things that we need to do to create a kind of a pipeline program. And Sally, who leads that program on our team, is in the back here. And for any of you that are interested, last year was the first year we had 50 externs from 12 different companies. This year we had 470, in its first year of kind of full-blown recruitment, we had 475 applicants from 25 schools in 8 states that applied for the program, this internship program. And we whittled that down to, we'll have over 100 developers, designers, engineers working at close to 40 companies, ranging from Lilly, Interactive Intelligence, Salesforce, Angie's List, to startup companies that are just getting off the ground. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please reach out to Sally in the back or email talent@techpoint.org. There's also a lot of other things that are going on as well. We created the expat program that is attracting those 25 or kind of late 20s to mid 40-somethings that are living elsewhere but have roots back to Indiana. So if there's anybody in kind of your friends, family network that fits that category and you're looking for a way for them to plug in, our team serves as an ambassador, kind of a middleware, to enable to connect those people to the companies and the job opportunities that are here. And again, you can email talent@techpoint.org to get connected there as well. An open invitation to any of you. We do a weekly jobs roundup email that we just started a couple months ago. And so every week we'll round up jobs, that are hot jobs from companies from around the area, and we'll push that out to our distribution list, our subscribers, about 13,000 active email subscribers. And that's something that's a freemium model, so you guys are able to post those jobs that fit the profile there. There are other great things that are happening, like I mentioned before, WGU Indiana and our universities that are spinning up programs to help meet this need, 1150 as well, that are some of these approaches that are taking kind of inside the traditional educational pipeline, and then some that are taking outside as well. So there's the solution, stats solution, quick story. This is a totally non sequitur, but I'll go ahead and share it anyway. How many of you recognize this guy?
Charles Kettering?
Nope. Nope. Work. I've got another video for you. It is the month of May. There's your tip. Raise your hand. Anybody know him by name? Nobody? Okay. This will be a good story then.
I always thought life is a race. You have to be fast, you have to be fearless, and you have to be first. I fancy myself an idea man of sorts, and I wanted to build the greatest automobile racetrack in the world.
It's not.
First, you see it. Then you inspire great men to believe it. I'm in the business of moving mountains, and I see the race to its finish. That's what Indy is all about.
Just cut it. It's not.
Barnelli
If it's not gonna
Jones
play, just
knew
cut
it when he
If
broke
the video's not gonna
150.
show, just cut it.
Then came Sneva.
Okay, video's not showing, but hopefully it gives you the tip. It's the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the guy is Carl Fisher. Carl Fisher was one of the forefathers of the Speedway, and ultimately led to the sports landmark that we have today. But the story you don't know, and that's what I'm going to share with you briefly. This is a guy that grew up in Greensburg, Indiana, born in 1874. He was a bicycle enthusiast that opened a modest bike shop here in the area. And at 30, he bought the interest to the patent to what was the predecessor to today's headlight. This was an acetylene headlight, so any of you familiar with acetylene, it's flammable. He blew up a couple factories in the process. But he did create the product called Presto Light, the company called Presto Light, that would be the headlight for most all the automobiles in the country at the time. And he made this investment with a gentleman named James Allison, which is probably a familiar name of a major company here in the Indy area. They ultimately sold that company to Union Carbide for a sum that in today's terms would be about $210 million. And if you take a drive up, I think it's Cold Spring Road, up by Marion University, and you see the mansions that are there, one of them is James Allison's of Allison Transmission, and the other one is Carl Fisher. So Carl Fisher, after not only did he create this company, turn it into a success, become a major automobile industry leader, sell it, become a wealthy individual, he then created what is thought to be the first automobile dealership, which was actually here, actually a couple blocks away from here. First automobile dealership, the idea of showrooming cars for people to be able to come in and buy them, was pioneered here. He was quite a stunt man, and one of his most famous stunts is that he took a hot air balloon, connected one of his automobiles, specifically a Stoddard Dayton, to it, and he flew it over just about where we are today, here downtown Indianapolis. Created a lot of hoopla, landed it outside the city, and then drove the car back in. What he didn't tell people is that he had actually removed the engine from that car, and he had another car just like it that was waiting outside town that he drove in. But nonetheless, he was quite a promoter and a stuntman, and he wasn't done. This is where it gets really impressive, but the story that's not very well known is that then he said, you know what, if we're going to compete with Europe, and if we're going to really make the automobile what it has the potential to be, we need to have the ability to drive these cars, because the roads at that time looked very much like things like this. Not very passable, cars breaking down all the time. So the viability of an automobile was not sufficient. He said, we need to have a roadway that goes clear east to west. It needs to go clear from New York to San Francisco. And he set out to make this road happen, going state by state, city by city. And this was not a federal, many of us think of the road system as a federal government project. At the time, that wasn't the case at all. It was crowdsourced by getting companies, his friends in the automobile industry that had a vested interest in this road happening, the states that had a vested interest in commerce that would pass through their state, and he went incrementally across the country. He and his cadre of supporters would go place to place to place to build support to make this road happen, and it ultimately did. And this is the Lincoln Highway. So we have him to thank for the Lincoln Highway. And it's purported that Eisenhower, driving on this road, was what inspired the interstate system. But then he wasn't done. He said, we need to do this again, and we need a road that goes clear from north to south. So he then inspired the Dixie Highway that goes clear from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan all the way down to southern Florida. And then that road ultimately came to fruition as well. And it was while he was on vacation in southern Florida in the Miami area that he was overlooking a swamp, what was a swamp mosquito-infested area between Miami and the ocean, that he said this could be a major tourist attraction. And then the area that we now know as Miami Beach, that was Fisher too. So he then rallied together a bunch of people, created an entire real estate project to drain the swamps, build up the land, build internationally renowned hotels and resorts like the ones that you see here, and turned it into an internationally renowned tourist attraction. He then said we need to do this again. And also in regard to Miami Beach, the island that's just off of Miami Beach, some of the most expensive real estate in the country, that's Fisher Island, named after Carl Fisher. And if you look in the history books of Florida, some of the 50 most influential people in Florida history, one of them is Carl Fisher, known as Mr. Miami Beach. They then went to do this on Long Island, created Montauk Island, and it was in the midst of that project that the Great Depression hit. Carl, as you can see, was very invested in a lot of different things, and the Great Depression ultimately took him from this man of incredible accomplishment to a man of modest means as he lived out his life in southern Florida. But I think the moral of the story for me, and the inspiration for me, and why I ultimately said yes to this job, and I hope the thing that we take away from this conference, and also the prospects of what the work that all of us are doing have on a broader scale, is that the place that is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the place that's the single largest sporting event in the world, at a time looked like this. It was a cow pasture. And it was a guy like Carl Fisher that said this could be the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the proving ground for speed on an international level, and ultimately became the place that we know today and will celebrate here in a couple weeks. And I think of this largely, this green field of opportunity is where we are largely from a data and analytics, big data, everything that we're talking about today. You know, the reason why the presentation just prior to mine is largely projecting what could happen. And I think that that's something that we can embrace here as well. And I hope that we all do seize upon the opportunity to take this green field of opportunity that is happening in our tech ecosystem and turn it into another landmark, something that's nationally and internationally significant, companies that are growing and flourishing here, much in the same way that Carl Fisher did with our sports legacy. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. We've got an award for you right here.
Jeez, how many people competed?
You win for the afternoon.
I win for the afternoon. Perfect.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
We'll get our picture.
Appreciate
if you
it.
have a second. Get your hands full.
Yeah.
And if you walk over here,
Okay.
she'll get one more of you.
Perfect.
One more round of applause for Mike Langellier. If you're not a member of TechPoint,
Thank you,
I
everybody.
encourage you to sign up. You can visit their website, techpoint.org.
Yeah, just TechPoint.